Hi, I'm Tom Metzger, your host for Race and Reason, the #1 show of its type on cable access TV throughout the United States, seen in over 50 cities, reaching out to white working people across the United States. True freedom of speech on this show. Today we have John Jewell, who is a staff writer for War newspaper that goes out all over the country. John has been in this battle for a long time, but he comes from a different beginning than a lot of us did. I hear you came from the left. Tell us about your life, John. How did this all start?
I didn't come from the left. I didn't come from the right. I came from the white working class. Now, I was born and raised in this state of California to the age of 14. My people came to this state in 1889. It was a white man's state at that time. My people came over to the North American continent in the 1600s. They made this nation. They were the colonists. They were the pioneers. They fought the Revolution. They fought all the wars of this country. They pushed west with Daniel Boone into Kentucky. They were the first white settlers into Illinois. They were the first white settlers in Missouri. They fought the Civil War on both sides. They shed their blood for this country, for the white nation that they had helped build. What happened after the Civil War? They were bankrupted, shoved off their farms by the fat cat capitalists, by the bankers.
Well, what happened in the beginning? Let's go back to John Jewell in the beginning.
There's no way of talking about it without understanding how my family got to California. They were shoved out west. They didn't come out here as greedy usurers trying to steal up people's lands. They were shoved off their farms, the farms that they had built and settled. The bankers and the railroads shoved them off the farms. They hit this state and tried to grow wheat. They were bankrupted out of their farms again. By World War I, they were down in the gutter again of Los Angeles County trying to get working-class jobs. They went off to World War I, another rich man's war, shed their blood, came back to the trash and the corruption of the roaring 20s. Then came the crash of 29, the dirty 30s, the Great Depression, shoved back down into the gutter. Rising up out of it, what happens again? All the boys in the family sent off to World War II, another rich man's contrived war. They came back from that war, tried to build a new life for themselves. My father joined the Los Angeles Police Department. He raised up to lieutenancy. He commanded the Newton Division, which is the black ghetto of Watts. It's from my father that I learned these things. From the age of 7 years of age, he started teaching me white racism, pride in the white race. But I want to make one thing clear about my father. My father was down there when the black Muslims first started in Watts Ghetto. He always told me, at least those black Muslims have pride in their people. They get their people off the street. They get them off drugs. They get them off prostitution. They organize their people. He said, if I was a black man, I'd be a black Muslim. And my father, as a policeman, also refused to bust any black kid on the street that just stole some food because he was hungry, because my father remembered what it was like to be hungry back in the dirty 30s. That's the kind of background I come from.
So he was upset with the lackadaisical white people that wouldn't stand up for theirs.
We've always known in my family that the real enemy is in Washington, D.C. and in New York City and Wall Street and the banks. That's the enemy, the white enemy up there that's always exploited our people.
That must have been quite a learning experience with your father in those days and the experiences he had.
Yeah, when you're a cop's son and you see it from that side, you really do. My dad died in the late 50s and my mother remarried to a man in the Army, CID, criminal investigator. We went over to Germany.
What year was this, you think?
1960, 61, during the Berlin crisis, during the Cuban crisis. We weren't even supposed to be there. The first year I had to live in a German neighborhood, and all my buddies, my comrades, were Germans. I saw what was done to the German people, the German working class people during World War II. All the bombed out ruins. You go up to where all the rich Germans lived, not a bomb was ever dropped there. You go down where the white working people lived in Germany, you see everything wiped out. Mass murder of white women and children by the United States Air Force, British Air Force, Canadian Air Force, and you find out reading history it was deliberate. They didn't want to kill any rich Germans, they wanted to kill the ordinary white working Germans.
Yeah, they did. They seemed to concentrate on the working blue-collar areas of Germany when they did their bombing to make Germany submit, right?
That's right, and the other thing I saw there, I was living on a paratrooper base. It was blacks, Puerto Ricans, and poor whites. Some of the worst trash that I've ever seen. I lived in a home where we got the phone calls every night. of German women, German children, little German girls, 5-year-old girls, raped, murdered by American troops over there. At 14 years of age, I started speaking out on military bases and in military schools against the U.S. Army being in Europe, against NATO, against the capitalist exploitation of the world. And, of course, I got it down on me.
There were some major race riots over there during that period of time, as I recall.
There were race riots all over the place. There always have been from the beginning of this country.
Isn't this a shame that, you know, like the French used the blacks on the Germans, and then and we bring the blacks and all these other races into the act over there?
Well, if you were a German kid on the street, you'd really understand what America's about. A bunch of thugs raping your women, murdering your children. That's what America stood for. I went there as a proud American, and I became ashamed of America very, very quickly from what I saw in that country.
When I was in Germany, it was very interesting that during the war they flattened Mannheim, but the word went out from the generals not to touch Heidelberg just a few miles away because they wanted that for their headquarters.
Their headquarters after the war. All the fancy sites were kept for all the big generals and politicians coming in from the United States. They went and mass murdered ordinary working people, children, mass murdered. And they talk about what the Nazis did during the war. What did the United States do during the war?
Did you ever see anything firsthand of some of these, like the firebombing of Dresden, the results of that, or did you ever get into it?
I met a lot of people, that the few survivors that got out of there. I met the guys that came back from Stalingrad, saw them staggering drunk in the street, still completely insane in their minds what they went through. And I was told this is the enemy. They weren't the enemy. Those were white working people, my people. That's the blood that I came from, northwestern Europe. They were my people, and I stood up for them.